Hello. So, it's finally time for a new video, and it's draft. Who would have guessed? It's been a while, and that's because I've been very lazy in terms of draft, but it's finally time to bring back a draft. It's OFC, Alpha Club. I played in a few seasons of Alpha Club at this point. I think I played season 6, 7, took a break in 8, and then did 9, and this is season 10. So, yeah, good to be back, and this time it's Pokemon Home format. Pokemon Home is out, so that means all the Pokemon that are available to be transferred from Pokemon Home are legal. Obviously, there's some banned Pokemon, you know. Thank God someone has actually decided that Chi-Yu is too good for draft, thank you. I hate that stupid thing. It's dumb. Doesn't deserve to be allowed. I know Shibu now gets banned because it gets Swords Dance and it's broken. So, 2 monsters that I hate, banned from draft now? That's what I like to hear. The actual format, 9 to 12 Pokemon, 115 points, from Pokemon ranging all the way from 19 to 1 point. As for Terra rules, it was the same as they did for the start of Gen 9, which was Season 9, I think. I think they did Season 9 as the first one of Gen 9 that they did. Maybe Season 8, I don't remember. But, the rules are, that you have to have at least 2 Terra Captains, and the total points of those Terra Captains cannot go over 13 points. You're capped at 13 points, which essentially means you are the highest point Pokemon that you can get with it that can Terastallize is 12 points, and then you have to have a 1-point Pokemon in your roster that you have to make a Terra Captain. Now you can do some things like you can have like a 6-point and a 7-point mon, or an 8-point and a 5-point mon, things like that. But you don't have to cap it out, by the way, like you don't have to fill the 13. But like it makes the most sense to. So it does make drafting a bit awkward at times, but overall, it's a decent way to make like there's no real good way to make Terra work in draft, really, I don't think. Like, not one that everyone's going to be happy with, and I think it's a pretty reasonable one, because open Terra / pick any Pokemon you want to have a Terra Captain is pretty dumb. So, yeah, so that's, I think, everything gone over for the basis. For me, for my draft, so we're in pools of 8. There's 4 pools of 8 total. Split into 2 divisions as well, so 16 people in one division, 16 people in another, and we'll play people in our division. So, but the actual drafting pools are in pools of 8. And I was 5th, which is like one of the worst spots. Like, I always complain, like, about my spot because I love to, because I always complain, oh, I get first, oh, I get... Actually, no, I never complain if I get last pick. I just think it's... like... Especially if I don't know what I want, I really like getting last pick, because I like to just go, alright, what's left? Yeah, I'll take those, and then just find a way to make it work. Slap bang in the middle, I was like, okay, maybe I'm hopeful I can get something out. Nope, not a chance. The main thing I wanted was Great Tusk, and that was 3rd pick overall. The other thing I was maybe hoping for, because maybe some people wanted to try out the new tools, nope, Iron Valiant went round 1. One day I will get to draft that mon. But, it got to me and I was like, I actually have no idea what I want at this point. Like, I need a top-end mon. So, what do I pick? And the 2 options that were kind of open were Garchomp. Garchomp was open, And I kind of considered Garchomp for a bit, and I was like, do I take Garchomp? Maybe. Like, it has spikes now, it's like, you can't really go wrong with Garchomp. But I figured that it was probably better to get well, one, this is a Pokemon I've never used in Draft. So it's, like, even though it's been out for ages, like, I've never used it. And also, like, it's nice to get a high speed tier really early. It's also technically got removal in some ways. And I think it was just a good solid pick all around and kind of let me be open in any way, shape, or form for the rest of my draft that I wanted to be. And that Pokemon is Cinderace. This is Libero Cinderace. With Libero's nerf, Protean and Libero have both kind of become a bit more, they've been more allowed in draft now, from what I've seen. Instead of it being like a super high, well, it's still high points. This was 18 points. The second highest tier. But Cinderace just has a lot going for it. Again, it gives me a great base speed stat off the bat. 119, really, really high. Especially without things like Flutter Mane, Shampoo, things of that nature. It's still, like, 119 is relatively high. It won't outspeed everything on everyone's teams, like there will be people with higher speed stats, but it'll still be pretty good. It obviously hits pretty hard, especially with Libero being able to change its typing, and gets great coverage. Like, back in Gen 8, when Libero was even more broken, like, you wouldn't use a Fire Stab as much, because, like, you would just use, like, High Jump, Kick, Sucker Punch, U-Turn, +1, like, whatever kind of worked on your team. But now it's more likely that you actually run a fire move. Iron Head, for example, is a pretty reasonable one for fairy types. So, with the ability to kind of pivot out and have that fast, like, offensive power as well, just felt like a really good starting point. Again, as I kind of mentioned, it has a sort of way to clear hazards with Court Change, where it swaps. There's the effects of fields, so you can just, like, all those spikes and stealth rocks that your opponent stacks up, you can just Court Change them away. Screens as well, I believe this works for, so you can just take your opponent's screens, which is really, really cool. So, and it has a couple setup options as well. It has both Swords Dance and Bulk Up, though I don't know how often I'd be using Bulk Up over Swords Dance. But Swords Dance will do a lot of damage. So, not the most, like, diverse move pool. I guess Trailblaze could be useful if you just need the +1 to outspeed certain Scarfers. And then you can kind of use, like, that to get going. So maybe that's an option. But yeah, like, Cinderace is just a super versatile offensive mon that kind of just works in, like, a lot of situations. It's not the bulkiest thing on the planet, but it can take a hit or two. Like, if it needs to. It can take a resistant hit, and especially with being able to change the type. Like, even if it's just once, like, just being able to go, like, I'm going to use Pyro Ball, and then now you have to wonder, am I going to U-turn, am I going to Sucker Punch, or am I going to stick around and fight? And just, like, launch off a High Jump Kick or something. Don't like that we have to be using High Jump Kick, but, you know, here we are. That might, if it gets to a point where I have to run Wide Lens, I will. So, but yeah, Cinderace gives me, like, a really well-rounded start. Like, it most likely will be running Boots most of the time, I imagine. Just because it's so good with Boots. But, like, what's it called? What am I thinking of? But if it needs a bit extra power, it can go for a Choice Band or a Life Orb. Both of those work really well with Cinderace. Maybe even an Expert Belt, something along those lines. It's not very versatile, but, well, it's sort of versatile. It can be really hard hitting, it can be a sweeper, or it can just be a general good pivot, but it's always going to be fast and hitting hard most of the time, regardless of what you try and do with it. So, that was my round 1 pick, and I wanted something to pair with it. And I was like, well, I've got a really fast pivoting one that hits pretty hard. Why don't we get a slow one? And boy is this thing slow. So slow, it's in the name. Slowking Gala. I never get to use this thing, because normally I'm just like, well, why wouldn't I just go for normal Slowking? Galarian Slowking has kind of, like, made the name for itself at this point as the definitive Slowking. Obviously, regen, amazing. The stats are really great. It means it actually does a really good amount of damage. Like, even if it's going defensive. And the defenses are great. 95 HP, 80 defense, 110 special defense. And Poison Psychic is surprisingly good, like, offensive and defensive coverage. Along with the amazing coverage that Slowking itself gets. Eerie Impulse could be funny, if needs be, but, like, you know, you've got your dual stab with Sludge... I think it is Sludge... Wait, no, it's just Sludge Bomb. The Psychic Side Shock, you've got Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, not Thunderbolt, just Thunder Wave. It gets T-Spikes, which is really nice. That already gives me a hazard, and something that's, like, just a great thing to have. As well as giving me a grounded poison type to avoid T-Spikes myself. Slowking Gala is something that will come to a ton of games, and as a result, will pretty much entirely scare off T-Spikes from coming against me, so, which is, like, obviously great. It gets both Calm Mind and Nasty Plot to set up for offense, which, again, great. Combine that with Slack Off as a reliable form of recovery alongside the Regenerator, and the only Pokemon, other than regular Slowking, to get Chilly Reception, which is great because it means it can pivot. We've got a fast pivoter, and we can pivot into something bulky, like Slowking, who can take a hit or two and get out. Or stick around and do some good damage. It gives a lot of good utility. Future Sight, obviously amazing as well. A ton of just good utility as well as good offensive moves. Gives it a lot of potential to do tons of different things. Literally today, like, people were talking in the draft chat, saying, yeah, sometimes just, like, Galarian Slowking can just solo games. Just because, like, if the it's weak to 3 types. And the main one that's going to be, like, hitting it, but the main like, it's weak to Ghost, Dark, and Ground. Ghost often won't even hit it that hard, because most Ghost types are special attackers at this point. And it's pretty good with an Assault Vest, or, you know, Boots, or whatever. It can have a ton of different really useful items. But also it can go... but, like, if you manage to eliminate the Ground and Dark types, there's a good chance that Slowking can just solo teams. Just because it's so hard to take down, because it's a poison type, you can't toxic it, and just as a result, it's super hard to whittle down, and if it is able to go off like a Nasty Plot, then, you know, the game might just be over there and then. So, really excited to see how this performs. See if I end up liking it more than regular Slowking, so. We got a good start, obviously, but we kind of have this thing called a ground weakness. So that's going to have to be figured out at some point, and so I kind of had my 2 next picks, like, back-to-back. By the way, I want to shout out Fat Rat for helping me with the drafting process, because I wanted to actually do well this time. The last couple singles drafts I've done, which I haven't uploaded, not because they've been bad, it's mostly because I've been lazy. I've not done so well, but this time I actually want to do well, so. Next up, I wanted to pick up, there was a Pokemon that I saw, and I was like, I want to pick this up now. Like, there's 2 Pokemon I want to pick up, but one of these always goes. There is not a single draft that this Pokemon doesn't go, and I'm like, I've got the chance to pick it up now, I'm picking it up now. And that is honestly just the bulkiest Pokemon that's ever made. Say hello to Ting-Lu. So, this thing's stupid. This thing's disgusting. 155 HP, 110 attack, 125 defense, 80 defense, 80 speed def, which is, you know, a bit low, and then the 45 speed. but also it has Vessel of Ruin, which lowers the opponent's special attack, so it makes it even bulkier. This thing don't die. Like, if you want to try, like, you will, like, any non... It can live any non-boosted hit. It can live any non-boosted hit, no problem. You know, if I had to go against a Cinderace and it high jump kicked me in the face with Libero, Tinglu can live it. Tinglu can do everything. Tinglu is, like, a disgustingly good Pokemon. Because, like, even though it's defensive, like, it's disgustingly, and everyone knows it for its defense, it still hits like a truck, too, because of that 110 attack, even uninvested. And with both Earthquake and, I'd say Throat Chop, I know it gets a physical Dark-type move that it can use, alongside Ruination, which is just, Super Fang. So, yeah. And then both Stealth Rocks and Spikes. So we've got all three of the main hazards. Obviously there's Webs, but like Webs doesn't see as much play now. Very rare to see Webs in draft at all, just because of Boot's existence. But like now we've got a Rocket and a Spiker, and one of the most reliable there is. Like, I've talked about in the past where, like, sometimes you don't need a lot of different hazard setters, you just need one that's super reliable and maybe like an off-pick in case. Like, in case, like, Tinglu needs to go Assault Vest or something, like, make sure I have at least one backup rocker or something, just in case. But otherwise, like, Tinglu can just sit there forever. It can run Rest if it wants to. It's got Whirlwind to phase as well, which is amazing. Heavy Slam is pretty reasonable for fairies that want to come in as well. I believe Tinglu is, like, extremely heavy. So, yeah, like, we've got essentially one of the fastest Pokemon in existence. And also, it's really nice paired with, like, along with our fourth pick, it also pairs really well with Galarian Slowking, because, like, basically everything Galarian Slowking, like, would not like Tinglu will eat, and eat it for days. So, yeah, nothing I think too really special with Tinglu. Like, it could go offensive and just, like, maybe like Choice Band or something, but for the most part this is going to be the defensive behemoth backbone of the entire team, because nothing can kill Tinglu. Just, it doesn't happen. So, partnering with this though comes our fourth pick, and a nice ground immunity would be in order, as well as something else that can pivot, and I mean, it's me. Hi, I don't know if you know, my name's Winder, and like 90% of my drafts will involve a Rotom, so say hello to Rotom Wash. This core right here of Tinglu, Galarian Slowking, and Rotom Wash is disgusting. Rotom Wash is only weak to grass. Tinglu's weak to grass, but can probably take a hit just fine. And then you've got Galarian Slowking and Cinderace. So, Rotom's got great support. Again, it's that ground immunity, which really helps Cinderace and Galarian Slowking. You know, it's nice bulky water type, and, you know, also has good offense. Surprisingly, this is the Pokemon so far that we've drafted with the lowest offensive stat. Can you believe that? Because I can't. Because we've got 116 with Cinderace, which is a naturally offensive Pokemon. Slowking, who can be offensive or defensive, with 110. Tinglu, kind of similar deal, offensive or defensive, with 110. And then Rotom Wash with 105. So poor Rotom out here is trying his best. But even with no access to Defog, I still like having Rotoms because they're reliable. Like, Rotom is a reliable Pokemon. Except when I want to try and hit a Hydro Pump. It's super versatile. So, like, unlike Slowking and Tinglu that are forced to be slow, Rotom can go fast, it can slap a Choice Scarf on there, it can go for Nasty Plot and start trying to sweep. It can play a defensive role with things like Will-O-Wisp and Thunder Wave. Trick Scarf is obviously amazing as well. Rotom, I've talked to death about Rotom. Like, I've used Rotom so many times that it's not even funny. Or the synergy that it has with the 3 other Pokemon that we already have, I think is worth it in this draft. So, mainly with Slowking and Cinderace, but Tinglu obviously just helps with as well. It's because Tinglu just does Tinglu things, but Rotom really helps synergize with Galarian, Slowking, and Cinderace because we've got Rotom Wash, who is only weak to grass, and then 2 Pokemon that can, one that can really switch into grass types, and then another one that can also switch into grass types, and both of them can threaten them. So, that was pick 4. Pick 5, I knew I wanted a proper removal Pokemon. And that meant I wanted Rapid Spin or Defog. And one of the most reliable for me, like, especially lower down, is like, at this point it's pretty much accepted that, like, the main 3 form, like, the best 3 hazard removers are the Donphan family of Great Tusk, Iron Treads, and Donphan itself. And I've got Tinglu, so I'm not picking Donphan. But one that I always really like drafting is Serena. I've been drafting Serena a lot because it's one of the few Rapid Spin Pokemon in the game. I think I drafted it last season of OFC, actually. And when it's like, okay, yeah, this can Rapid Spin, it can U-turn, it can heal itself. It doesn't have as much coverage as it did back in Gen 8. Notably, no Triple Axle and no Knockoff. But it still gets high to play rough, still gets high jump kick. Zen Headbutt if need be. Like I say, it can heal itself, which is a big thing for me. Like, it's got self-recovery, so it doesn't need to rely on something else to heal it up. Whereas, like, Tinglu and Rotom do, if they need to go bulky. So, the main thing is Spin. It's a bulky grass type as well, which completes our Fire, Water, Grass Core, which is, you know, super solid. Can't go wrong with a Fire, Water, Grass Core. Does really good damage. Again, there's a Pokemon that could be defensive, or just, like, bulky, with 120 attack, you know? Hey, look, it's my 9-point Pokemon with the highest offensive stat on the team. You know. I don't think I mentioned, but Galarian Slowking was 15, and both Tinglu and Rotom were 14. So, definitely, we're going for a heavy draft. Rat advised me that a heavy draft this generation is probably for the best. So, like, focus on, like, 8 to 9 Pokemon. Don't worry about trying to get a well-rounded team, like, just focus on strong Pokemon. So, I think Serena's a pretty strong Pokemon. Obviously, Queenly Majesty can be kind of useful against some matchups. And I've used Serena a good amount. I'm pretty familiar with this Pokemon. I've got a few Pokemon that I'm not as familiar with, like Cinderace is going to be a big learning curve for me. Tinglu, I'm just going to throw it at everything and see what happens. I've used regular Slowking before, so I think Galarian Slowking I'll be fine with. And, I mean, then there's Rotom and Serena, which I've used both of these a ton, so can't really go wrong with that. So, after this point, though, I did get sniped. My child, my baby, Florges was taken away from me. Again, seems to happen a lot recently. Every time I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get Florges. Nope, not happening. So, things had to change, and I had to make a plan based off of not getting Florges, and I had to kind of choose one of two ways. I went with one way, and it certainly led me in a direction that I didn't expect, but I still think it's probably for the best. Because it leaves me with, I think, overall a better team, rather than what I would have maybe gotten otherwise. So, I didn't get Florges, I wanted a Wish Passer, and I wanted a Fairy type. Those were the main things I wanted. I looked at Dash Bun. I had Dash Bun the last season of OFC, I believe. It was okay. Wasn't great. It was fine. It was 6 points, so, you know, and it's still 6 points. So it's decent. It's not too bad at all. But I wanted something good. And so I decided, you know what? I always pass on this Pokemon because of Florges. Let's finally get the good one. And that's Sylveon. We're picking Sylveon, finally. I never pick Sylveon, because I'm always like, well, why would I pick Sylveon? I can pick Florges. Yeah, Sylveon's still very, very good. Everything I like about Florges, Sylveon can do. It's a wish-passing fairy type that does a good amount of damage. One upside to Sylveon is it is much more reliable at going offensive. And also gets some extra utility things like Yawn, which is really, really nice. Sylveon hits a lot harder as well, which makes it perfect for going a bit more offensive. But Carmine Draining Kiss sets are pretty reasonable for it. It can just sit there and Hyper Voice all day. It's got that great Speed F stat, which, you know, obviously goes great with our Team Blue and the massive Fizz Def stat. So, yeah. Pixelate Hyper Voices do a ton of damage. It's 1.2, yeah. So it's 108 and then Stab, I think, something along those lines. It does a lot of damage. It's way more powerful than Moonblast. So, and it gets Sidekick / Side Shock, which means that Poison types can't come in and just stop you. Now, Steel types can, absolutely, but we've got a Ting Lu, so Steel types aren't going to be the biggest concern. We also have some other Pokemon that might be able to deal with said Steel types. We've got a Ting Lu and we've got a Cinderace, so we've got some good stuff to deal with those pesky Steel types. So, not too much to say with Sylveon, since I've used Florges so many times. It's just kind of like, I don't like to say it, but it is technically a better Florges. It is only 12. It is 12 points, so it's 3 points higher than Florges, I believe. But I think I'm gonna end up liking Sylveon. We'll see. We'll see. So, because I'm going so heavy here at this point, like, this is 6 Mons, like, we're pretty heavy on the points. So, that means that we need to make sure we get some lower tier stuff as well. But I looked at everyone's pool at this point, and by the looks of things, it was I was looking pretty good. Like, once I got this Sylveon, I kind of looked at, like, what else I wanted, and once I kind of settled on it, like, especially after some other decision makings, which we'll talk about, I felt pretty comfortable with picking pretty much anything. So I was like, okay, let me get kind of the one that's an oddball. I was like, okay, a ton of people have got this type, maybe some people haven't got this type. This Pokemon is such an oddball that sometimes it'll go, but rarely will it go, that I was like, if someone's got their eye on it, I want to just make sure I get this now, because this is kind of a focal point of the team, that if I miss out on something else, then I would be kind of upset. But I think that going for this now is right, and that is my main Pokemon that I'm going to be terrestrializing, because while I could terrestrialize Serena, while I could terrestrialize Sylveon, because these are both in the point threshold, I end up going with Alastria. So, Alastria is a very interesting one that I had no intention of ever drafting, really. But with King, I think it's pretty solid. It's also pretty slow, which means there's some potential for some trick-room shenanigans going on with Alastria. Plus, Chilly Reception makes this even harder to take down. Chilly Reception into Glastrier, giving this a 1.5 defense boost. Give this thing an Assault Vest. I will turn back. Sick. There we go. So yeah, with an Assault Vest and in snow, this thing is impossible to take down because it's got like, if it's just max HP and it doesn't even that defense is almost 450, it's like 440 or something, and then the Spadef with the Assault Vest would be something along the lines of what, like, it will be pushing 400, it'd be like 380, and then 404 HP, and then just Animate max attack or Brave or something. Give me a physical move. Ice Skull Crush. You got Ice Spinner? You don't get Ice Spinner. Okay. But yeah, 427 attack and has Chilling Neigh, so it can snowball literally out of control extremely quickly. On top of that, if we don't want to be abusing the Chilly Reception and giving this the boost, we can obviously Terrastalize it. Ice is probably one of the worst types in the game, especially one on such a slow Pokemon. But if we can turn it into a better type, one that can utilize the offensive moves that it has, you know, it's got Heavy Slam, and not Iron Head, but it might just be Heavy Slam for a Steel type move. But Heavy Slam and being a Steel type, or I could just go with Terror Blast and have it as be a Steel type. Trailblaze? I don't know that. That's kind of cool. Or Smart Strike, there we go. I knew that was another. Stomping Tantrum, the ground types. We can go for Close Combat or Body Press for being a fighting type. Or again, we can choose any type. Why do we get Outrage? And have Terror Blast. So, you know, Ice is weak to a million different types. But we could just turn ourselves into a Water type and just start hitting things with, and then just have like Water and Ice moves. Or we could turn into an Electric type and have Ice and Electric moves. And then like Ground type moves and like nothing's dealing with Glastrier then. Especially if we do get it into Trick Room. So there's a lot of options to get Glastrier in, and it doesn't need to be in Trick Room to kind of do a lot, just because it's so bulky, and kind of can trade like, it can trade like 1-for-1, just because it hits so hard. So there's also the option to Swords Dance with it. So yeah, that's a thing as well. So I'm really excited to see how Glastrier does, and especially with Terror. Especially with Terror, I think it's going to be a lot better, because it's going to take even more hits to take down, because they've got to guess if I'm going to Terrastalize and into what, and then what happens from there. So yeah, really excited to use Glastrier with Terrastalization. So yeah, let's go Glastrier. I'm excited for this. As soon as the first four were kind of settled in, and I was trying to figure out like, okay, yeah, I want to make sure I have some breakers. Glastrier popped out to me, and I was like, I want to use this. So I made sure to grab it now. And especially because after this point, like, I kind of looked and I was like, I feel pretty good about getting anything at this point. Like I've got one more big Pokemon that I want to be grabbing, but no one else is going to be taking it at this point. So once it got back to me, I was like, I could take this Pokemon, but no one else is going to pick it. They either don't have the points for it at this point, or have the types that this Pokemon has. I guess spoilers, it's a dual type Pokemon. I was like, well, let me go round out my low tier picks. Now obviously I have to get a 2-point Pokemon at some point, or one, to pair with the Glastrier to make it so I have 2 Terra Captains. It kind of left me in a weird spot in what I wanted to do with my low tiers, and this was a big turning point for me, because in this slot, I went to sleep and I was like, okay, when it gets back to me, I'm going to pick Copperaji, make sure I have a Steel type. And then I got up and I thought about it, and I was like, Wait, why am I gonna pick this? Like, I'm never going to use it. I've got a Glastrium. I'm never gonna use Copperaja. So why would I pick it? And I was like, do I just pick it because it's a Steel type? No, that seems like a bad idea. I want to pick a Pokemon that I'm gonna use. So, I am doing something sacrilege and I'm not getting a Steel type. Instead, I'm choosing to pick up a Pokemon that I just think is a better Pokemon suited for this team because it offers more. And I honestly think it's probably a better Pokemon anyway. And that is Primeape. So Primeape was 5 points, Copperaja was 6. But I think Primeape's super versatile. Because of the fact that Annihilape exists, this thing can hold an Eviolite. It has two great abilities. One of which denies hazards even more. Because, you know, now we've got Defiance, so if Defog is the main form of removal, now we can just have a Defiant Pokemon there. The other thing as well is this one can do a ton of different things. Now, even before giving it the Eviolite and thinking about Eviolite at all, it can do exactly what it used to do. And that is most likely run a Choice Scarf. And just be a Scarf offensive fighting type. And base 95 Scarf isn't bad at all. It gives me something a little bit faster than Rotom. 105 attack's pretty good, and especially with the coverage it gets, things like EQ, Gunk Shot, Elemental Punches, Rock Slide, Stone Edge, and U-Turn as well, which is great as well. Probably some other stuff that I'm missing as well. But it can just be a good offensive Scarf fighting type. But because it gets access to Eviolite, it can do other things. Bulk Up is, I think, a pretty reasonable option. It can do Bulk Up Drain Punch, you know, similar to its older brother in OU, in Annihilape. But similarly, it still gets Rage Fist, because it's still part of the line. So while it's not Stab, it can go for Bulk Up, Drain Punch, Rage Fist, +1, and just go with a mini Annihilape set. And while it's nowhere near as bulky as Annihilape is, the Eviolite kinda helps make up for it a bit. So, yeah, like, that is an option. And the other thing as well is, this thing gets rocks. Because Annihilape gets rocks, so does Primeape. So, just like, where it, like, I don't know, like EQ, Close Combat, Stealth Rocks, U-Turn within Eviolite, just so it can come in and take a hit or two. And this, it can also set up it can also taunt, which is really nice. Primeape actually has some pretty good options. Now, it's not got the best defensive typing of being a pure fighting type, so it's not really gonna, like, resist a lot of things other than, I guess, maybe Bug, but, you know. Like, the option to come in and, say, take a hit from a Steel type and just start launching hits back, for example, I think is pretty decent. So I'm excited to see if there's a world in which Annihilape comes, because while I'm going to be kind of focusing on my top end of the draft, I think there's a place for Annihilape in some games. Where there may not be as much of a place is for my next pick, and as I say, I had to get a 2 or 1 point Pokemon for having a Terra Captain, and so I picked Dunsparce. There's a world in which Dunsparce coming with a Terra and setting up coils and turning into a specific type can just win the game. There's also options to Stealth Rock with it, as well as Yawn. It has some useful defensive options which could come up, as well as the fact that it's a normal type. Like, I picked up 2 different unique typings here that I may not have done otherwise. There's obviously just Body Slam, fun stuff with Serene Grace and just sitting there and being annoying. Like, a lot of my team is fairly slow, so powering things is going to probably help a lot, to be quite honest, just to slow things down. So, having something else that's pretty dedicated to doing that is not a bad thing. Again, having a normal type isn't exactly a bad thing as well. Because I was like, oh wait, what am I going to do against Dragon? Oh wait, I have a Ting Blue. Dragon Pulse not really an issue against Ting Blue. I tried, and it's kind of hard to beat Ting Blue's Dragon Pulse. By kind of, I mean not possible. No. No. That's not something that happens. So, yeah. So yeah, Dunsparce gives me some options. There was maybe some other options I could have picked, but I thought there's, out of all the 2-point Pokemon, I had all of the 2-point and 1-point Pokemon available. I was like, this is the one that I think has the most chance to come into a game. So I'm going to pick it. So, this is also a Terra Captain, but it's mainly Glastrier. So, this gives us our last pick, in which I saved up a ton of points for, to have another top-end Pokemon for. And that's mainly because if you look at the rest of my team, there's one kind of main thing that's missing from it. And that is a true special breaker. I got Glastrier to be a physical breaker, and while some of my Pokemon can deal good special damage, like things like Sylveon, Rotom Wash, and Galarian Slowking, all of these have very respectable special attack stats and can do a lot of good damage. None of them are what I would describe as a breaker. And also, my fastest Pokemon's Primeape, a Pokemon that I wasn't even going to plan on picking. But, because originally one of my plans was being like, okay, I'll not get this next Pokemon, I'll get Hisui and Gudra. And then I looked at my speeds, and I was like, oh no, my highest speed stat, other than Cinderace, is Rotom Wash itself. So I was like, I need to get some faster things. So while it's not the fastest thing on the planet, it does fill the role of a special breaker that I think synergizes well with the team. And as a result, only gives me one overlapping type, and that is Hydreigon. So Hydreigon has kind of fallen out of favour for two main reasons, and that is the lack of Roost and the lack of Defog. But what does it still have, you might ask? Well, it can still drop Dracos with base 125 special attack, it still has decent physical attack to go mixed if it wants to, it has Nasty Plot, which is great. It can now set Stealth Rocks for some reason, so I have 4 Stealth Rockers now. Don't know how often Hydreigon of all things is going to be setting rocks, but if I need a 4th move on it, on like a non-choice set, then if I just need Door Stab U-turn, and I just need one more move and no coverage is really speaking out to me, I can just slap on Stealth Rocks, not a problem with that. And another big one, U-turn. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of mine. 9? Am I forgetting one? No, this should be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of my 10 Pokemon, yeah. My 10 Pokemon can pivot. Yeah. I think the best way to describe this team is bulky offense, but bulky is capitalized. This is a fat team. Because Hydreigon's not exactly a slouch in bulk either. Being able to pivot between this and other Pokemon is really nice. It's something else. It's another great Scarfer. I've got kind of 3 really good Scarfers in Rotom, Primeape, Hydreigon, and Serena as well, honestly. All 4 of those are great Scarfers. So, like, there's a good chance I will have to bring a Scarfer to help out, with speed. But I've got a good amount of options for Scarfers, which I think is really, really nice. Sub Nasty Plot can do really, really well into a good amount of matchups. Just Sub Nasty Plot with lefties, and then just like Dark Pulse and maybe Draco or Dragon Pulse for coverage. So, like, Hydreigon is similar it's similar to Glastrier and Cinderace. It's kind of a mix between the two, and then throw it on the special side, where it's got some utility, It can also set up, but it also can pivot. So it can do a good amount of offensive rolls while also being decently bulky as well. It can come in and take a hit, and often won't really need to run boots either, because it won't take, because it's off the ground. Similar to how Rotom is never gonna run boots, because it's only got to worry about Stealth Rocks, so you don't have to worry about spikes on all the grounded Pokemon. Instead, it can afford to run lefties on a sub nasty plot set, or if it's just or a bulky set, or if it just wants to go offensive, go Specs, Scarf, Life Orb, Expert Bell, something along those lines. So, and while fairies certainly look like they might be a bit of an issue, especially with the lack of a steel type, I do have Galarian Slowking, which kind of just eats fairy types for breakfast. So, even Enamorus, which has recently come out, the Fairy Genie, doesn't really deal with Slowking. Maybe Enamorus T, which is the slow, bulky one, maybe that one can, but from what I understand, Slowking beats Enamorus 1v1, and Enamorus gets Earth Power. This is Enamorus I. Enamorus T maybe is a different story, because it's got a lot more special attack, and is a lot bulkier. So, maybe. Cinderace can switch into a Fairy type move if need be. So, Fairy types are definitely a concern. But there's also the fact that Galastria can Terrasilize into a Steel type if need be, and be the Steel type of the team, which isn't exactly a bad thing. So, yeah. I overall am pretty happy with this draft. Should be able to pull this up now. That's showing? It is indeed. Yep. So this is the full draft. So yeah, if we look down here, when I originally wasn't going to have Primeape and Goodra, Primeape and Hydreigon, the speed was an issue. The speed was an issue. So, you can't see my mouse. I was trying to circle something with my mouse and it just wasn't showing. Whoops. But yeah, you can see the speeds, it would have been an over 30 point gap, and I was I need something a little bit faster. And while it's still a 21 point gap, it still forces base 110 speed Pokemon to run Jolly or Timid, to make sure that if I run a max speed Hydreigon, then they can outspeed me. So, the types are a bit off as well, it could have looked better. Obviously the Fairy types look a bit bad. Fighting was one that was actually a bit rough to kind of get around. Just because, I mean, one of those is Dunsparce anyway, so it's kind of 3 and 2, but one of those is Galarian Slowking. Flying, if you don't count Primeape, is 1 and 1, and then Fairy would be 2 and 2 if you don't count Primeape. So, yeah, it's not as bad as it looks, honestly. It's just a bit strange. I think mostly because we've got Galastria, but Galastria being able to Terrasilize kind of helps with a lot of those. Rock, for example, Fighting, both of those can kind of be a lot more favoured, especially if we're going to a Steel type, then Flying and Fairy can be kind of neutralized a bit better. So, Flying is definitely one that's going to be a bit awkward, because I don't have a Steel type, and then I don't have a Rock type. My only natural resist without Terrasalization is Rotom Wash. So, we'll have to see how that goes. But I'm excited regardless. Even if, this is a fat team. I'm curious, what's the... God, that speed's so bad. What if we take off Dunsparce, for example? What's the average, Yeah, so average attack 100, average defense 92, average speed def 97, and average HP 80. And special attack's a bit on the lower side, but that's because there's more physical attacks than special attackers. There's Primeape, Primeape, and if you include Dunsparce, are both physical attackers most of the time. So, I've always found that in Gen 9 is just more physical attacks than special. So, yeah, like, that's just gonna happen. But, like, especially because, like, Hydreigon is a Hydreigon's a special attacker that with a good amount of physical attack as well, so, yeah. Anyway, I've probably rambled on enough. I don't know why it's not showing anything here. Well, oh well. Yeah, so that is the team. Thank you very much for watching. I'm looking forward to actually playing my matches. The draft at this point hasn't technically finished, but I know what I'm terrestrializing and I don't plan on making any free agency. So, yeah, that will do it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.